Hi guys, this is Joe. Today I want to speak about something that comes up every now and again when I'm giving a tour or I'm giving a lecture and we're speaking about the book of Exodus and the Exodus from Egypt and the crossing of the Red Sea and where is Mount Sinai. One thing that comes up that people mention is this: we have found the chariot wheels in the Red Sea, they found bones of the Egyptian soldiers, they found at Mount Sinai a special rock that has like little shapes coming out of it. They found the altar of God. They found where the water came forth from the rock. And seemingly amazing discoveries. The problem with these things is that they are based on absolutely no archaeological or even scriptural evidence. Those who do push these narratives offer certain things, and I'd like to try to just make a little video to explain why these beliefs are problematic, to try to disprove some of the things over here, and obviously as somebody who believes in the Exodus as being a historic event, want to try to show ways that we could do it vis-a-vis science, archaeological record, written record, and of course through the Bible and religious tradition. So let's get started with the leaving of Egypt. It says that when the Jewish people were leaving Egypt, they left from Ramesses, which is in the land of Goshen. We can see that referenced in Genesis chapter 47, verse 11, when Joseph is actually settling Jacob and his family down into the land of Goshen. It says that they settled in Ramesses, which also, by the way, if we take the biblical record, I know there are those who read it as the Jews being in Egypt for 430 years from start to finish, but according to Jewish tradition, it is 210, and I will explain that maybe in another video how that works, but right now let's just take it simply as it being 210 years from the time that they arrived. So that would preclude it being within the time frame of Ramesses, so that basically there's two Exodus theories for those who believe in the Exodus. You have the 13th century BCE Exodus, which means they left sometime in the 1200s, and then you also have the 15th century BCE, in which they would be leaving in the 1400s sometime. But again, just taking it simply, the Jewish people leave from Ramesses and they make their way to a place called Sukkot. From Sukkot they go to Etam, and then from Etam Moses is told by God to turn around and head back to the area of Piacharut, or Pitom according to Jewish tradition, and encamp between Migdol and the sea opposite Baal Tzafon. Okay, so we have a very specific geographic region being mentioned over here. We do have record of some of these places in Egyptian records as well, and some theories as to what other places could be. It's very, very hard to say with absolute confidence that one place is this and this place is that, but suffice to say at least one of the places we could pretty much be sure about, and that is the city of Ramesses. Ramesses today is in a place called Pi Ramesses. There was a city that was built a little bit before that called Averis, and during the time of Jacob would have been called Rotwe. So that's all in a general area, and that would have been the area where most likely the Jewish people, the Israelites, would have left from the land of Egypt, at least the first stop. Everything else is approximated, but seemingly when we're talking about leaving and lining up by the sea, they're on the border with Egypt and the desert. And in that time, the Red Sea, as we know it, went further up into the Sinai Peninsula in the area of where the Suez Canal today, the Great Bitter Lakes. And it seems that they would have crossed in the area by Lake Timseh or the Al-Bala lakes, which are now dried up today. The water level is much lower today than it was in antiquity. as there are numerous dams that have been put on the Nile River for water consumption, what have you. And the Nahal, or the branch, the wadi, if you will, that used to be the overflow, would flow into the great Bitter Lakes and the area of where the Red Sea was in antiquity. That's called Wadi Tumalat. And seemingly that would be where most of the places that we're talking about in the Exodus story are taking place. And the crossing of the Red Sea would be somewhere along these lakes that were in existence. Maybe Lake Timsah, which was the northern terminus of the Red Sea in that period, would be a candidate. And then you're hitting actually the Red Sea. Red Sea, in English we read it as Red Sea, but it is coming from Hebrew as Yam Suf. Yam Suf is indicating that there are reeds. It would be the Reed Sea. For whatever reason, we don't know exactly what, during the translation of the Torah into Greek, the Septuagint, that was changed from Reed Sea, Yam Suf, to Red Sea. Okay, which might have been one of the names of the sea at that time, but again, we don't really know. Okay, so that's pretty much where it works with the Exodus story. It is a local Egyptian event, and they're at the cusp of the desert, about to go into the desert, and are crossing somewhere along that area of where the Red Sea possibly could have come up into the Isthmus of Suez, what's today the Suez area. Okay, now comes along the theory that was mainly propagated by a man by the name of Ron Wyatt, who was an untrained archaeologist. He disregards all that literal biblical reading, and he opts instead for being very specific about the area in which the Jewish people find themselves enclosed as Pharaoh's army is pursuing them. Okay, so he wants to say that the Jews traveled all the way from Egypt across the entire Sinai Peninsula and arrive at a place called Nuweiba, what's today called Nuweiba. And over there's a little opening between two massive mountains where a little wadi flows through, and they found themselves entrapped. He also gets a little dramatic and finds by the beach they found where the pillar of fire sat, and how the stone and the sands have melted and become one block. Again, this is a man that's not trained in archaeology or geology and knows the workings of geomorphology. There are answers for that. Again, I'm not qualified as a geologist, so I can't really give them to you, but there definitely are ways to explain why the sand looks like all glued together and what have you over there by the crossing. He also points out that when he was there, he found a pillar, and the pillar there and on the other side of the water were made by Solomon. And again, these are claims, unsubstantiated claims. And then he decides that he wants to take a dive. He goes into the water, and lo and behold, they find the chariots of Pharaoh's soldiers and bones. And he shows these nice grainy pictures, and you see what appears to be the spokes and wheels of chariots, broken chariot wheels and what have you, in the water, as fresh as the day they were destroyed. And there is a claim that these are the chariots of Pharaoh's horsemen. They took out some bones, and these are the bones, and that could be the only viable explanation for that. Folks, there's been over 3,400 years of history that has taken place from that period of time until today, and it could be any number of things or whatever have you. Even if we entertain that it was true, we have no way of knowing for sure without a proper archaeological examination of the artifacts as to whether they are indeed dating back to the time of the Exodus. Okay, but let's grant him that. We cross over the other side where you find another pillar where he claims they were written the names of God and coming from Solomon, what have you, but conveniently the Saudi government had taken this pillar away, and there's no proof, and also they were arrested and their pictures were confiscated and yada yada yada, blah 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 blah. They don't have any proof of that today, but you have to take his word because of course he is speaking the truth, right? So today there is no less than 13 different locations for Mount Sinai. At the base of the mountain they find a rock that is split where a man could walk through the little crevasse, what have you. And this is claimed to be the rock of Horeb, the rock that Moses struck that watered the camp of the Israelites while they were in the wilderness. And this is a place where the Jewish people camped. Also below they found some structures, which he wants to claim that this was the altar that was built by Moses, and there are 12 pillars. And as well he finds pictures of bowls, which he wants to claim liken back to the golden calf. Again, all of this is taken out of context by an untrained individual. So Mount Sinai that he claims to be Mount Sinai is Jebel al Lawz, which we already spoke about, that there are at least 13 different theories. He bases his theory on a passage in the New Testament, Galatians chapter 4, I believe it's verse 27. If not, I'll correct it up and you'll see it down right over here. What it is, where Paul, in his letter to the Galatians, is talking about Mount Sinai in Arabia. Okay, so therefore, he's setting up the picture over here. Mount Sinai cannot be in Egypt, which was a claim that he makes, and Sinai Peninsula, according to him, was in Egypt, and Paul is making this argument that it is in Arabia, and therefore it must be that it's talking about Saudi Arabia. The problem with the purveyors of this theory is that the entire region, the Sinai Peninsula, even going all the way up to Egypt itself in antiquity was basically ending by the great Bitter Lakes today, where the Suez Canal flows down over there. That was the end of Egypt, and anything beyond that, going to the east, pretty much was in the area of Arabia. So the Mount Sinai that is in Egypt, Jebel Musa, which has its own set of problems why we don't necessarily perceive that as being Mount Sinai, but that would have been in Arabia, as well as all the other ones as well. Now, there's another thing that they want to claim, that Mount Sinai was in Midian, because Moses, when he's tending the flocks of Jethro, says that he saw a bush burning, and remember, Jethro is in Midian. Okay, now if we fast forward in time to when Moses is about to receive the Ten Commandments, we have in the Torah portion of Jethro, that he comes to visit Moses, and he makes great fanfare and tells Moses some advice about appointing judges over different sizes, so that Moses is not judging the entire Jewish people on his own. And then it says that he makes his way. He appreciates everything that Moses did, and Judaism and the God of Israel and everything else, but he wants to go back to his own land. His own land is Midian. So that would preclude Mount Sinai from being in the land of Midian. Again, all of this is taken out of context by an untrained individual and as being preached as being factual, and this is what it is, and people are buying it because they want to believe it, and you know, the people that want to believe it are well-intentioned and everything else. But this is a pitfall in this area over here. We have to be absolutely scrutinizing in the evidence that we accept. It has to line up with the scriptural evidence. It needs to line up with what we know about the periods of time. And in my opinion, it should be vouched by trained professionals. Now, when it comes to archaeology, this is kind of a slippery slope. Archaeology doesn't necessarily prove or disprove anything. Archaeology is kind of a soft science. We have archaeological proof, if you will, of things that actually happen vis-a-vis inscriptions. We have an inscription that says this, or something that would show the archaeological evidence would be overwhelming and seems to vouch for a story. For example, the story of King Hezekiah and the Assyrian invasion. The extra biblical evidence over there is lining up very well with the story that is being told in the Bible. But in general, archaeology is opinions. You find an artifact, the artifact doesn't scream, "I'm from the early Bronze Age." No, it doesn't. It doesn't work that way. There is interpretation. It doesn't scream what it is. Many times you have to decipher and figure that out, and that's years of schooling, and even then you have different opinions, and then you have people that are in academia and they want to build a name for themselves, so they're going to come against what you're saying, etc., etc. So this is one of these things where it's not an exact science, but at the same time, it is very important to consider the archaeological evidence as it comes out. But there you go. In terms of where is Mount Sinai, where are the cities and places and the different stops along the way, it's almost impossible to know. We are very much disconnected from the period of the Exodus, and with the exception of a few things where we have corroboration between the biblical record and the evidence on the ground, we can't state with any absolute certainty that a place is that it is. But nonetheless, we can take solace in the fact that it did take place. Thanks for watching. Hey guys, if you enjoyed that, please make sure to give it a like and subscribe. You can check me out on my other social media platforms: Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Pinterest, and of course YouTube. And if you wish to retain my services as a tour guide here in the land of Israel, please check me out at www.masoratravel.com.